tonight and tomorrow night, and kind of get an overview. And then we'll dive into some of the details. So tonight we're going to talk about some of the economics and the costs. I'm going to cover that. That's my favorite. And give you a quick introduction to the type of system we're talking about. It's a solar system that generates electricity for your home. There are a lot of solar technologies, so we're going to focus on the kind of the simplest version to do it yourself, self-install.
Can everybody hear okay?
Yeah, I can use the microphone if need be, so tell me if you can.
If anybody can't hear, just let us know. Thank you.
We're also going to talk a little bit about the paperwork. Yeah, paperwork. It's always a fun part of the world. And it varies by community how much paperwork you have, but you definitely have paperwork with your utility you have to do. So we'll talk about the process generically. Each utility does have some variations between Penelec and Sullivan. I'm sure there's some differences. But and in our experience, we're mostly familiar with PPL's version of it. So if we've got something wrong, we've got at least some representatives from up north, but still covering parts of Sullivan County, so they can help fill us in on their experience. We'll then get kind of into the more of the real stuff. We've got a demo roof here, a panel mounted. We'll talk about the basics of what it is and how to get started. At some point tonight, the time will run out, and we'll kind of call it at 9-ish. We can take more questions, but we won't try to push through. We'll make sure there's a lot of interaction. But we're going to kind of cover as much as we can about roofs and how to mount on various roof types. The basic ideas of attaching to the roof, rails, racking, and that sort of thing. How to size it in terms of determining the total size, and the handout talks a little bit about more sizing details. And that will kind of cover probably how far we'll get tonight. For your homework assignment, if you're serious about going forward with the do-it-yourself project, you're given your homework assignment, draw out your roof. Okay? If you can measure it or know the dimensions, that's even better. But bring in a drawing tomorrow, just sketch it up any way you can, of how big of a southern-facing roof you might have and where you want to put your solar system. We won't be able to go off through it with everyone, but we'll be glad to interact with and to tell you what we think and what we know. And you'll learn more about how to sell if your roof is a good thing when I start getting into those details later tonight. Tomorrow, we'll talk again more about the second round of paperwork you have to do. And then actually how to mount the equipment on the rails. And there's a fair amount of that, plus how to then connect it into your household electrical system and to the utility. And we'll kind of close it out with that and a little bit of discussion of how to maintain a system once you've got it. That's very simple. Because there are no moving parts, there's very little things to break, very few. That's the good news. It'll last for 20 to 25 years without any real work. Okay, any questions about the outline of what we want to try to cover in the next 2 days? All right. Let me talk about kind of the highest level, first level considerations. Is your site a good site for solar? It's not easy to say without actually visiting a site. I know I have trouble doing it, but I also learned how to look at Google Earth and aerial pictures. And that's a really useful tool to tell yourself whether or not your roof is really facing south or not. The nice thing about all those aerial pictures on Google Earth is they've already been oriented for true south being the bottom of the picture. Okay? Magnetic south is not true south. Your compass in this area is off by almost 10 degrees. So you can correct for it, but it's really easy to look at the aerial picture on Google and know already how it's aligned. You don't have to be exactly facing south. If you're off by 20, 25, maybe even 30 degrees, it's okay. If you're off by 10 degrees, you won't have any problem. The issue is how much you'll lose in production relative to perfect. And in that 20-degree angle, it's kind of in the margins. You're not going to lose too much, so your payback in terms of dollars getting you paid back will be about the same. If you're perfect, you'll maybe do it 6 months early. But if you start getting beyond that 30 degrees to the left and to the right, well, then you're going to start losing production. And the money you put into the panels to buy them at the beginning won't pay back nearly as quickly. The same thing, and even worse, is if the spot you install it is shaded by trees, satellite dishes, dormers, chimneys, anything like that. So you want a spot that has as much sun as you can get it all year round. This time of year, we just had the summer solstice, we get lots of sun. And so and the sun is high up in the sky at noon, and you think that spot is really good. But in the winter, when the sun's really low in the sky, and it doesn't come up until 8-ish, it doesn't, sets at 4:30, you know you're not getting a lot of sun on the same spots, and the shadows are a lot longer. The nice thing is there is a tool called Solar Pathfinder, and Blair brought his when I forgot mine, so I'm glad he did, that allows us to make a measurement at one time and predict the amount of sunshine that hits that spot year-round. Some libraries have these to rent. I doubt Sullivan County does, but I do know that over in Luzerne, they do have them, or at least we think one library we were told has them. In Wayne County, we donated, and our SEEDS organization does them for SEEDS members. And it's not often we get this far east or far west, but we'll be glad to do some if you join the organization. I'm glad to come back. The tool it's about $300 to buy one, but it's not hard to use. It's basically a matter of getting it level, oriented to south, and then take a picture of it with the sun shining on it. And you can then see in the dome the shading projected on a grid when you look straight down at it. And that grid will tell you by hour of the day and month of the year how much shade hits that spot. It's an interesting mathematical geometric problem that a math professor solved a few decades ago and has made a good killing with selling these devices after they patented. Anyway, okay, so that's how to tell if your location is good. It doesn't have to be on a roof. Roof is kind of the least expensive because you've already got a structure there to attach it to. It could also be a ground mount, is what we call it, where you build a structure that's kind of roof-like in a field or next to your house, next to your garage, whatever, and you have to therefore pay to get that additional structure built. But it doesn't have to be enclosed, it can just be a frame. And you angle it, if you have the premium angle, whatever you want, instead of just taking your roof angle. I didn't talk about roof angles because it really doesn't matter. You can put solar on a flat roof, you can put solar on a 45-degree roof. It will make a slight difference in how much you produce from year to year, but any of those will work. The premium, the best around here, is about 30 degrees. But feel free to do any angle. You really should not feel constrained by it. If you're going to build a ground structure, use a 30-degree angle. That's just the easiest way to get the maximum generation. Then there's the sizing issue. How many panels can you fit? We're going to talk a lot about the physical sizing in terms of measuring and seeing if it fits physically. But there's another part of sizing, which is how much power, how many watts of generation capability are you installing? And we'll talk a lot about that when Blair gets up. But a panel like this is a typical size. It's about 40 by 65 inches. And different manufacturers will sell them in different wattage as a capacity of generation. Typical you can get at the low end of this size is 250, 260 watts. And at the high end, you can get 350 or more. You'll pay a premium price for the higher capacity because it's denser, more efficient conversion of sunlight into electricity. If you're unconstrained by needing to produce a lot of power, you just want to put power on and get the same return, the lower cost per watt is the best way to go. But if you feel like you want to maximize your generation for your limited space on the roof, then you'll want to pay a premium, perhaps, for the higher wattage panels, but expect to take longer to get your payback. The handout most everybody got when you came in is a short description of a process you can walk through of how to determine your payback. It also tells you how to use a Pathfinder, how to go online to the National Renewable Energy Lab's website to convert the specs of your design, what's the angle, what's the tilt, what's the shading, and all those details onto an online web page. Give your geographic location. It uses 20 years of historic weather data to then say how much sunshine should you expect to get every year at that location, and how much power you will produce. So it can give you a kilowatt hour outage, and there's an example on the back of the handout from that report that it will give you. So that's my best recommendation to predict how much electricity you'll actually generate for a design. And you can play around with that tool. It's kind of neat. If you want to change the slope from 30 degrees to 40, down to 10 degrees, whatever, you can experiment to see how it changes if you could get a perfect orientation versus something that's not quite perfect. It's not a lot. Questions? Yes?
Yeah, 30-degree angle roof is a rise of about what over what?
4 over 12?
What's that?
What's a 30-degree angle?
30 degrees,
It is
6, 7, 12, something like that.
Yeah.
612.
I
I think
think it's
7 is
612.
28 and a half degrees.
Okay. It's been too long since I've
I
done
think
that.
it's 612 because that's 30, that's 60.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep, I should do that. Okay. The other limitation that frequently comes up is not the physical size or the power it can generate, but rather cash. How much money do you have to invest in your solar system? And it is an investment, and you should treat it like an investment. So that's why the payback calculation is important. But if you don't have the cash, then you can't really invest it. You can go get a loan, and some companies will offer you a financing, perhaps, with purchase of a solar system. It's a hard thing to do in Pennsylvania. And in New York State and a few other states, Maryland, they pay a lot more for electricity than we do, typically. And so financing is more common in those areas of the country rather than here. But it does happen. If you need financing, it's a conversation you might be able to have with a professional installer or a bank. Though we've had trouble getting banks in our area to offer loans just for solar systems. You don't quite understand. So you don't have to install 100% of your roof or 100% of your power load to start with. The nice thing about the particular technology and the system technology design we're going to talk about is it's incrementally, you can add to it as you go. So if you hit the lottery 2 years from now, then you can add more to your system after you added the first bit this year. Okay? And it's okay. The overhead is not too much. So it pretty much scales linearly. You'll get the same payback time with the size of the system. It's just you put more money in at the beginning, your payback is about the same whether you install a 10 kilowatt system or a 5 kilowatt system. It just, you have to put less cash in at the beginning.
What is that noise?
Good question. I can hear a buzz.
There's a high whistle, and I can't find it. Do you have it?
Is that all?
Ready to go to the doctor's office.
Yeah, that's awful. Of course, my hearing is so bad. Did it stop? Okay.
Yeah.
That must have been it. Okay. Cost.
No, we're on.
It's on again.
So the paper was written last year, and the good thing about solar is the costs have been dropping over the past 5 to 8 years. 5 years ago, we would be talking about 50% higher pricing for solar systems than we are today. So the prices have dropped significantly. So it is very affordable. And if you do it yourself as labor, it's even cheaper. So the typically way you'll get a price estimate from a professional installer, or if you go on Amazon, you'll see a fixed price, but you'll always want to convert it into a price per watt, okay, of capacity. So anybody says they're building you a 2 kilowatt system or a 10 kilowatt system, take their total bottom line price and divide it by that 2,000 or 10,000, whatever it is, to get your price per watt. Typical 2014 average was about $3.50 to $4 per watt. Blair tells me this year, because the equipment prices are dropping, labor prices are not, it's more like $3 a watt. Okay? It's going to vary though. Installers aren't necessarily local, so they're going to see their mileage having to come up here, and maybe it's going to be at the higher end for the long distance traffic. I did talk to one installer, Solaire. They said they love to do solar systems, but the person who does the solar system comes up from Lancaster. They subcontract. And there is Endless Mountain is in Wilkesboro. They do service up here, I understand. We see them in Wayne County. We have several local installers, including Blair's family business, who's been in the area for a long time, in our area. So if you do, the purpose of this workshop is we're trying to talk about it as a do-it-yourself. And so we're going to talk about the simplest version of the technology. But we also hope that people learn enough about it that they'll consider an installation, even if you don't want to climb on your own roof. You can contact installers, and they'll be glad to give you a quote. Usually they won't charge you at all to come out and do a site visit and to give you an estimate. But any range in between is fine too. Do-it-yourselfers, just here for the education, want to get a professional to look at it, any of those things, we're glad you're here. When you do this, though, I forgot, permitting inspection costs. I don't know how the towns and municipalities are here, but in Wayne County, we have a wide variety of permitting issues. Some townships are no cost, no inspections. Some charge you 1.5% of the contractor fee as the permitting fee. So know your township and know your municipality issues if you're going to consider permitting, and add that to the budget. Don't get caught owing a large permit fee, because an electrical inspection is required by the utility, if not by the municipality. Look for, if you do talk to a professional, look for NABCEP certification. This is the National Certifying Board for Solar Professionals. Blair's NABCEP certified. When the Sunshine Grant Program was available previous years, it would accept NABCEP certified installers, and then other installers who could prove their equivalent experience. And so a lot of electricians, some plumbers, some other people signed up as Sunshine Grant installers. And that's fine, but they haven't necessarily gone through the multi-level testing, the continuing education requirements, and the actual field projects that had to be signed off by another certified installer to get their national certification. So nationally certified installers have a little more experience probably than others, but many of them are very good, they just haven't gone to the effort of getting national certification. One of the problems the solar industry had, and many of you are the same age as I will know, in the 70s, a lot of installations happened, especially solar thermal systems, that were poorly done. And a lot of them broke within a year or two. And a lot of people gave the whole solar industry a bad name. And I know I was talking to Brian earlier, and there was some of that happening up in their service territory, with installers coming in, kind of charging a high cost and then walking away with no service, no way to maintain the system or help you with questions after they were gone. So getting a good professional is important if you're doing that direction. Okay. How do you make your money back? This is explained more in the memo, so I'm going to go through it kind of quick. Right now, the Sunshine Grant Program in Pennsylvania is unfunded. Governor Wolf has proposed it be refunded in his next budget. We'll see what happens. But you do get, right now, a 30% federal tax credit. It's not a deduction, it's a credit, so it's even better, for the cost of the system if you have income taxes to pay. So you can get that credit off of your due taxes, and if you didn't have enough taxes due this year, you can carry the credit forward up to 20 years. So it's a good deal to not have to pay taxes. But that credit expires at the end of next year, at the end of 2017. So you have to have your system in service, meaning it's commissioned and the utility has given you a green light, before December 31st, 2016 to get that credit. So there is going to be probably a rush on, unless Congress gets its act together and does something extended. Of course, you get savings from not having to pay utility for your electricity. You do pay your utility for your connection fee, so it's a monthly flat fee typically. And if you're a commercial business, you'll be on a demand charge probably. You still have to pay the demand charge if you're a commercial business. Residential doesn't have demand charges yet in Pennsylvania.
What does that mean on the cost?
It varies by each utility, and I don't know Penelec's prices. You typically, the flat fee is typically from $14 to $20 a month. If you look at your utility bill each month, it'll be on there as a separate line item in the breakout. No, the fixed customer fee. The demand charge is per peak kilowatt of load in any 15 or 1 hour interval. Yeah, I don't. Every utility has a different price, and I know PPLs. I don't know Penelec's.
What about off-grid? Can you
Okay.
go off-grid?
You can do solar off-grid, but our discussion here is going to be all about grid-connected systems. So there won't be any batteries. You won't be able to use the system typically when the grid is down, like storm damage or the lines are down. And there's a safety issue as part of the reason there. And it's less expensive to install a system that's grid-tied. And in just a minute I'll describe how it works. Okay, the third way you can get your money back is solar renewable energy certificates or credits, called SRECs. Basically, in Pennsylvania and some of our surrounding states, the utilities are required by law to have a portion of their electricity they sell every year be from renewable energy. In Pennsylvania, the target by 2021, I think, is 1.5%, if I remember my numbers right. And there's a kind of a growing step function every second year from where it started when the law passed to 2021. Utilities can install solar themselves in solar farms or whatever to do that, or they can buy certificates or offsets, these green energy rights to claim it's green, basically, from people who are doing it already. So you can sell your SRECs. Unfortunately, Pennsylvania allows any system in the regional electric grid, including New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, parts of Kentucky and Ohio, to all be parts of the pool. So our prices are pretty low for SRECs, because all those people can sell into the Pennsylvania utilities. So they vary by every week, but lately they've been running $25 to maybe $50 in any 1 month. And you get that amount back for every megawatt hour you produce. So we'll talk a little bit of the paper talks more about how you get to calculate your megawatt hour or your kilowatt hour production, but it's 1,000 kilowatt hours is a megawatt. So that's about 3 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour if you want to think of it in pennies, which is a good portion of what it costs to buy your electricity already from the utility, but it's not as good as getting it all. Okay, any other incentives if you're out of state or want to keep track of it? This website is a really good source. It's also mentioned in the paper as a reference. I've already talked about the income tax credits, but just so you have the form number, 5695 is the form you have to add to your 1040 to when you file for the income tax credit. Okay. The way you connect up to your utility is a method called net meter. Every utility by law in this state is required to support net meter. What that means is when you connect up to the grid and you generate your own electricity from your solar system or any other type of energy production system, the electrons will flow to the nearest load. And if that's your house, you're running your refrigerator, your washer, your power tools, whatever, the electrons will flow there and you'll consume the electricity you produced on site. But let's say it's a bright sunny day like it was today, and at noon you're getting lots of solar generation, you're not running your power tools, where does those electrons go? They go out in the grid. And your neighbors get to use it. In the process of leaving your house, it goes through your meter. And most meters nowadays are electronic meters, but the traditional rotating meter, the analog meters, they would basically run backwards. And the same thing's true as electronic meters, they'll count backwards. So that is a credit. It's effectively a credit on your bill. For every kilowatt hour you produce that you don't use, it goes out to the grid, and you get a kilowatt hour credit from the utility on it for that meter you kind of sold. So that's the basic audit. And the way Pennsylvania works is that credit is good for you to use at night when the sun's not shining, tomorrow when there's a storm front coming through and the clouds are in the way, in the winter when you don't have much sun hitting the panels and you need it to run your heat. That credit's good until next April or May, depending on your billing cycle. And then the utility will give you a check if you still have excess after the winter's over. If you still have excess credits, they'll give you a check, but at the lower rate to compare for any excess credits you have in that billing cycle from the whole year. Okay? So you'll get an actual cash check for that remaining credit. And that zeroes your balance with the credit, and you start accumulating more after that. Yeah?
Is it a different type of meter than?
Most utilities will come out and replace your meter.
Because the meters they use now charge you on what's called as parent power, not the actual real power, which favors the utility company.
Some utilities use that kind of meter, but I'm not familiar with that. But yeah, almost all of
So I
them.
was wondering whether they would then reverse that to ideal.
Yeah, so I don't know how the budget plans work. If you're doing a budget plan when you become a net metering customer, I don't know exactly how that works. I don't think they're generally compatible. But anyway, they typically will come out and replace your meter so that they're sure the meter runs backwards accurately. Yes?
If you're putting in a ground system, how far is the meter?
The one we're going to talk about today is AC trunk line. So you can carry AC pretty far, as long as you size the wire correctly. They may get picky on whether, if you're trying to put it 2 miles away, I don't expect that will support that. But you can do some distance from your base load. Okay. Any other questions about the net meter? It's a fairly complex topic, and we could spend a lot of time on it. But you can basically think of the utility in this grid-connected system as your virtual battery. You don't have to size the system to your peak demand, running those power tools, and needing the same ampage to support all the power tool load. But you instead, you use the grid to fill in your gaps. You don't need toxic batteries, more expensive batteries in your house, and you can use the grid as that. The downside is if there is an outage in the grid, the lines are down, your system is down. It's gonna see a good sine wave from the utility, and that's the signal to turn on. If that loses that synchronization, it will turn off, so that it's not backfeeding onto the grid and giving the linemen at risk while they're trying to repair it. The
Why?
same thing as generators. It won't
That's
see
all
a
that
square
says.
wave.
Generator trips a switch and it does the backfeed.
Right.
Why is it the panel?
Because of the UL certification and various things like that. Now,
Yeah.
there are other types of inverters, and we can talk about them on the side, but I don't want to take away time from
All right.
everybody, that can do other sorts of grid tied with backup or off-grid. But tonight, we're going to focus on a do-it-yourself, simpler project. Yes?
Let's go back to that monthly fee that you pay to the electric company.
Yes.
What kind of what's the history of how much that goes up or down, or has, you have a record of how much it started out at 10 years ago, $5, and now it's 15, it's got to go to 25?
I don't know any specific utility, except my experience with PPL. But yeah, historically, that fee was about $5, and the idea was it covered your monthly billing cost of billing and the cost for your meter, amortized over 15 years, 20 years.
I think it's about $8.35.
Okay, each utility has a different rate that is approved by the Public Utility Commission for that monthly fee. In PPL, it was, 4 years ago, it was $5. 2 years ago, they raised it to $8. It's now $14, and they just asked the PUC to review a case to be approved by the end of the year to raise it to $20.
It's up to $75 and you're
In some states, they're doing that. Utilities have asked for, in Michigan or Wisconsin, one of the utilities there asked for a $50 rate.
Either way, it's a fixed cost whether you have solar or not, so it's not consideration.
That's right. I understand. And some other states are different problems, but yes, yes.
Does the kilowatt usage that you have in your house impact on what you would be paid back from the excess that you're producing off of panels?
It would, so you're generating, when you install X panels, let's say 5 panels, and the sun shines on them, you're going to generate whatever it is that the sun generates. When you use electricity in your house, you're going to subtract from that. If you subtract less, you get money back from the utility because you generated more, right?
But there's no
But if you-
restrictions on it?
There's no, right now, there's no restrictions. There have been tentative rules in the Public Service Commission to restrict it to 110% of your annual demand.
Well, the reason I'm
And
asking,
200% now is the new proposal.
I have a barn, but I had the power disconnected years ago. That would probably be 50 yards from where I would put a ground system.
In Pennsylvania, there is a thing called virtual net metering, which allows you to have multiple meters on the same property. And you put the solar system on one of the other meters, and the whole set of meters on the same property are summed together for your net. Okay? Not all states have that, and some other states have better than that, but that's what Pennsylvania currently allows. Okay, we've kind of gone into some deep holes here, but let me back up now and describe what a system is before then we get into the real meat of it. Okay, it's a panel. This is a semiconductor material, usually silicon, that is like your computer, the computer chips. It doesn't like heat, so it becomes less efficient when it gets hot, and it actually gets more efficient when it's cold. The best single day on my system is in March. Even though the sun's not shining very much, I've got snow cover all in front of my panel. The sun hits the snow, reflects up onto the panel's cold. It's even more efficient at converting sunlight to electricity, and I'll have my peak production day in late March or early April. But these panels are basically under glass and an aluminum frame. That's all they are. They're very simple materials. The electronic component is called an inverter. That takes the DC power that is produced by the cells on here and converts it into the power we use in our homes, which is AC, alternating current. We're going to use entirely in these workshops, we're going to talk about using microinverters, which means typically one inverter per panel mounted on the roof or wherever directly under the panel. And that's what this is right here. This is a microinverter. And that's its typical location under the panel.
How heavy is a panel?
Panels are typically about 40 pounds. The biggest trouble is trying to carry them in the wind. They don't there are other types of technology for inverters, and we could go into lots of those, but we're going to keep it simple tonight because a lot of people understand AC wiring. When you use some of those other inverter technologies, you've got to use DC wiring, and your electrical inspector probably doesn't see much of that. And it's got a little greater safety set of concerns. So we're going to keep it simple and just use AC wiring for most all of the system. You've got to have racking to hold it on the roof. And so this is a rail, L-feet, end clips. Blair will get all into this. You've got to have wiring to hook it up. There's trunk wiring, traditional standard Romex. We'll talk about all this. And then you've got to ground the system. You want all the equipment on it to be grounded by bonding connections all the way to the ground rod and your home electrical ground. So Blair's going to review all this in the next 2 days. Typically, you'll want a production meter, and in fact, Calablac requires a production meter. They'll even provide it for you. Not all utilities require it, but we suggest it. By having a production meter on that one circuit, you'll know exactly how much power you're generating, not just your utility meter, which will give you the net of your generation and usage. You can also buy an add-on to the system to hook it to the internet so you can view it on your smartphone or on your computer. And you can check it every 10 minutes if you want. You'd be surprised how many new owners are checking their system every 15 minutes because when the cloud passes by, they want to know. Okay, and as I said, these are grid-tied, battery-less systems.
How readily do they shed snow?
Depends on your mounting angle and your
30
local
degrees.
conditions. Because the black, they're mostly black or blue kind of tint. Once you get a little snow blown off, it warms up pretty quick with the sunshine on it, so it falls off pretty easily. I've had my worst case was 2 years ago when we had a good ice mix in with the snow, and it stayed cold for 2 weeks. So I had 2 weeks of covered over panels and no production. Yeah.
What about hail?
Most all these panels by the manufacturer will say they can stand 1-inch hail at 90 miles an hour.
Huh.
And there are several videos on YouTube produced by them showing these tests of them shooting hail balls and marbles. And, so they don't break easily, but yeah, they can be damaged in a really severe storm. And your homeowner's insurance might cover that, just like they would cover damage to your car or your house.
We also have to let them know that you're putting solar panels on your roof to begin with, and then they'll jack your rate, so.
There are also trade-offs. Some carriers are more willing to deal with solar panels than others. Definitely. Okay, so now here we are. Blair's going to get up and now talk the real stuff, since I've kind of covered all the basics, or not real stuff. All right. Okay.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Great.
I appreciate everyone coming out very much. I appreciate seeing all they've done for the solar industry in general, but also for our company. I think it was 2008, maybe?
Maybe 9.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, I think it was 2008. Yeah, we're getting, got a phone call from this Seeds organization saying, hey, we're calling different contractors in the area, and we want to host some solar training if you're interested. So I come from a family-owned business. My great-grandfather was an electrician, my grandfather was an electrician, my father had plumbing, heating, electrical business for over 30 years in our area. So what do you do when you go through 3 semesters of college and can't find a major you like? You come home and work for your dad. That's what I did, and since 2007 I've been working for him full-time. Went and got my Sullivan County, New York electrical license, and because we're right there on the Delaware River, separates us from New York State. And my dad said, I'm kind of old, so why should I learn something new and try to teach you it? Why don't you just learn it and then tell me what I need to know before I die, and we'll go from there. So I went to a windmill course, solar PV, solar hot water, and since then we've been doing solar electric, solar hot water, and haven't done any windmills yet though. Just because as solar prices have dropped incredibly, windmill prices are still right there. So cost comparatively, everyone's going with solar. There's no maintenance to the solar. And also, when the Pennsylvania Sunshine Program was out there giving money also, there was no Pennsylvania wind fund out there. So there was no money out there for the wind industry. So we've been doing this for a good amount of time. Jack has gone through some of the basics on the solar industry. Again, we're doing a small window of the solar market. Yes, you can do off-grid. You really need to be serious about doing off-grid if you want to do off-grid. We're not going to get into that. We're not going to get into string inverters. Going off-grid is kind of more like a lifestyle. You know, you got to be really dedicated to, turning your lights off and unplugging everything, and very conscious about your loads. But again, this is what we're doing. As Jack had said, here's your basic solar panel, 255 watts. I think this is a Hyundai 255. Our systems will be anywhere from 250 per panel up to 260 maybe, 265, if you go ahead and order a system through us. But yeah, basically your panel, sun shines on your panel. Through the magic of the photovoltaic effect, you get electricity. That electricity is in DC, so it needs to be transformed to AC. And here's where that happens, is this inverter. You notice your panels are about 40 inches wide, and this inverter is mounted roughly about 20 inches over from the end of the panel, because the next panel is going to go right on top of it here, and your inverter is mounted right behind it. The back of the panel has 2 leads, positive and negative, just like a car battery would. If this was the panel on top of this inverter, these 2 leads would go right into these 2 leads here. Positive and negative, they're male and female, you can't screw it up. That's why we like doing these inverters. Now this is, if you're doing, if we have any electrical contractors in here, and you want to do this as part of your business, by all means do it, but don't take this course as your certification, because this is nowhere near what you need to be certified or to really know what you're doing. Yes, sir?
1 inverter per panel?
1 inverter per panel, yep. So then, after we plug our 2 positive and negative in here, this changes it to the AC, what we use in our house, and simply here is our 1 cable that plugs in to our trunk line. This is a trunk cable that runs along the length of the rail, and it has little outlets that you just pop off that white cover and click it in here. This trunk cable just gets zip tied, black UV resistant zip ties to your actual rail, and that just goes along the length of the roof. You notice we have 2 rails going horizontal per panel. You can run your rails vertical if you want. That's a possibility. We just like going horizontal because if you do have the 10-on-12 roof pitch, or you do have a metal roof and it's anything over like a 5, it's nice when you install your system, because once you get that first rail down, now you have a ladder to work off of. And it takes a little while to get that first set down, but when you do have that, then you work to the next one, the next one, the next one. Once you get your top rail on, then you do all your underneath wiring and then work your panels down to the bottom. Here is a rail, and then here's what we call an L-foot. All this is a 9/16 nut on a bolt, and the bolt slides in this rail. So you just push this through this upper hole. You notice there's 2 holes on this L-foot. I'll pass around a rail with an L-foot attached to it. There's 2 slots on this L-foot that you can go in either one. We prefer going in the upper one just because that gives you a little bit more height off the roof, therefore a little bit more air coming underneath them to cool them, because as Jack said, when the sun gets out and it's really, really hot, it actually causes a lot more voltage issues, and you don't perform as well on June 21st as you would in March or April, or even in October, November timeframe. So, your L-foot, we put it in the top rail, and there's a little bit of room, a wiggle in there, because if we have any roofing contractors here, we know that your roofs aren't completely perfect, that there's dips and you know, little hills and valleys everywhere on your roof, so this gives you a little bit of a room to compensate for that. How do we attach them to the roof? Is anybody looking to do a metal roof? Types of roof, you could do your regular ripple metal roof. That would be attaching that. You want to be in roof rafters. And what we have is just this sticky, nasty, butyl roof patch stuff. You can get it at a hardware store, a lumber company, something like that. You just cut off a square the size of the base of your L-foot and pre-drill a hole. And then you shoot a little silicone in the hole, put this sticky, nasty butyl down. It gets all over your hands. It's really not that fun, but it works. Then you put your L-foot down, then we silicone it like crazy again. That's what you do on a metal roof. If you do on a standing seam metal roof, they make these fancy little clips that don't penetrate the roof itself. So you have your vertical seam of your standing seam roof, and then just 2 Allen screws that go on this little metal bracket, and that pinches onto your seam of your metal roof, and then your L-foot just goes right onto that little piece of material. And then these, if you have a typical shingle roof, you have a piece of flashing that tucks up underneath the shingle above it, and then you have a lag bolt that goes down into the rafters. You want to find your rafters. You're going to lay out your system, and we'll get into that in a second. But you're going to lay out your system and then find exactly like, okay, this is where I want my panel to end. Here's the edge of my roof. I want my panel to end here, so I want to find that first rafter back in there somewhere. Okay, let me find it. Let me pre-drill it with a drill bit, and then once I pre-drill it, I shoot the hole with silicone. You don't have to. By the manufacturer specifications, you don't have to, but for us, we figure why not? Get that little added assurance for us. Shoot the hole with silicone. You tuck this little flash device up there, underneath it, the next shingle, and then you basically screw this down. You'll see there's actually a little aluminum piece that goes between the L-foot and the flashing, but I'll pass this around also. This has a rubber washer, the L-foot, then a regular flat washer, and then the lag itself. Excuse me. This is, how do you know what size drill bit to use to pre-drill your hole? Anybody know? Yeah, that's what you do. They say 700 or 70% of what your lag is. And you say, okay, that's, you want to do the math. Those are 5/16 lags. You do the math, you come out with, you just hold it up. You know, you hold up your drill bit and say, yeah, I can still, you know, if my threads are like this, my drill bit's on the other side, and I hold it up and I can't see the drill bit through the threads, then it's a good size to pre-drill. It doesn't have to be exact, but that's what you do. Yes, sir?
You have a standard spacer you can put under your L-foot, so you always got some space between the roofs?
Standard space?
Yeah, a spacer so you can get more circulation of air under it.
You could, if you want to order spacers, but typically this is pretty good spacing for being underneath it. Yes, yeah, so roof space, site and sizing, one is you gotta measure, will it fit on my roof? It's always good to measure and then measure again, and then measure one last time, just to make sure. Again, I think for our figuring purposes, we say 40 by 65. I think this is 64 3/4 by 38 3/4, or something like that. So 40 by 65 is a good number to work with. How many panels am I gonna fit? You know, do I have to work around any dorm room? Do I have to do anything with a vent or a chimney or a satellite dish? Something to take into consideration also is your roof age. Usually 10 years is what we try to limit our installations to. We have done a little bit more, but your panels are warranted for 25-year guaranteed power output warranty. That means after 25 years, they're still going to be producing, depending on the manufacturer, I think it's 80 to 85% of what they were originally spec'd for. These panels will degrade a little bit over time, but 25 years, you don't want to put a 25-year installation on top of a 30-year-old roof. If you need to replace your shingles, replace them. Architectural shingles, obviously, if we have any roofers here, they last a little bit longer, a little bit more durable. Just had a thought that, I'm sure it'll come up in a question. I wanted to kind of answer that question before it came, but it's not going to work. So, south, you want to be facing south, like Jack had said. If you're off a little bit to the east, a little bit to the west, not huge. If your tilt isn't, ideally for year-round production, you want to be at 29 point something degrees. If you have a 412 pitch roof, that's okay. If you have a 1012 pitch roof, that's okay. Yes, sir.
How much space do you leave between the panels, and does it matter?
Between each, from panel to panel? So what we have here is, you notice the end of the rail, for those of you that can't see, there's maybe 3/4 of an inch from the end of this rail before we start our clip. Basically, we want to give ourselves a little bit of room for error, because as you're working this